to duel!
Hey, what's up guys, it's Kerbo here from Yu-Gi-Oh's Before Hose, and today I decided to do an updated deck profile for kind of the end of the previous format and the beginning of Link format. The reason I'm saying that is because this isn't exactly a Link format deck profile, just because I don't have the links yet. So yeah, in all honesty, okay, so right now if there's a little bit of background noise, it's probably because I'm in a hotel in downtown Louisville. And yeah, it's really loud outside. There's a lot of construction, so hopefully that's not too bad for the background noise. Yeah, so I decided to do this deck profile, even though Code of the Duelist isn't out yet, and that comes out on August 4th. So by then, I would be able to make an actual deck profile, but I figured I'd do an update at this point, just because it's been a while. So yeah, just consider this like August 2017 format. But yeah. Might as well get right into it. So, first we've got Staple, Triple Madolche. So obviously Madolche is one of the best cards in the deck. It synergizes very well with Brilliant Fusion because you can normal summon, get your search for most likely Angeli, the best card in the deck, and get into Hoot Cake with the Angeli, and then you'll get to be able to normal summon that Angeli if you draw into your Brilliant Fusions or something like that. So yeah, Madolche's definitely, it's needed at 3. And pretty much every deck runs it at 3 as a staple. Next you've got debatably the best card in the deck, like I've said before, Madolche Angeli. Obviously you need to run 3 of this. You want to see it in your hand like every game. If you see this in your hand, you can automatically do things like pre-link format, 1 Angeli could get you into a Trident. It's a bit more difficult now. Now you're going to need a Mew-foil and an Angeli to get into a Trident just because of the way links work. And eventually, I'm assuming Konami will release a staple link monster that takes 1 monster and gives you 1 down zone. And that'll be great for keeping the 1-card Angeli combo alive. But for now, you can do a 1-card Angeli combo just going into Hoot Cake and then into Gelato if you wanted to just get some damage off. But at some point, I'm assuming Konami will release a generic Link 1 monster, and then this combo will work, because that'll help this deck a lot if that ever happens. Because there are a lot of Xyz monsters that you make just to summon out other cards. Next, obviously, whoops, dropped a card. Obviously, 3 Hoot Cakes, so at least that's obvious to me. A lot of people don't like to run 3 Hoot Cakes. They say they don't want to see it in their opening hand, but actually I love seeing this in my opening hand, because with the Brilliant Engine in this, and you'll see I have 3 ways to get to Brilliant Fusion, you're always going to have stuff in the graveyard, especially if you run into your Prenaplant or your Lone Fire. So this, having it in your open hand, isn't as good as Angeli, but it's pretty much just a second Angeli, because Angeli is going to go into Hoot Cake a majority of the time. The only issue is you're not going to have an additional Madolche in the graveyard. So yeah, triple Hoot Cake. Then next we've got triple Mew-foil. Like I said in the past, a lot of people run this at like 2 or 1, but I love running 3 of it just because if you draw it and you draw into something like Hoot Cake or Angeli, you can really just go off, because Mew-foil is really one of your combo facilitators, because you can just normal summon him, special summon any of your Madolches, and then you just have 2 free monsters on board. So yeah, it works out really well. Plus, if you draw into this and Angeli, in Link format, you can make a Trident, which is good. Alright, gotta be sloppy now. Okay, next, 2 Gelato. This is the perfect amount of Gelatos, because you're gonna be using both at the same time. It can become a problem if you draw into one of them, but you can still substitute it out by special summoning like an Angeli or Madolche from the deck. You just won't have as good results. Like, you won't be able to search a certain spell that you want. But 2 is definitely the perfect number, because you don't really want to open it unless you open a Mew-foil and a Brilliant Fusion, and then you just get extra stuff off and you still get your search. But 2 is probably the perfect number. You could run 3, but that would get like super bricky and super cloggy, and you don't really want that in this deck, because this has actually been really consistent. And to finish it off, we've got 1 Pudding Cess, just because really in Link format, Pudding Cess becomes your best friend, because you basically the best combo in this deck, which I can show you after the deck profile, is Angeli, Scorpio, or Lone Fire, and any monster. So it's pretty much a 2-card combo, and it can get you, by using Pudding Cess and Chocolate a la Mode, it's insane. And then next we've got triple Scorpio and 1 Cobra. I really like these numbers. I almost never draw into Cobra, but when I do, I can still work around that. Like, it makes a couple of the cards dead, but that's fine with Brilliant Fusion. Like, if you draw into the Brilliant Fusion, then you're fine. I've had issues where I've drawn into, like, Scorpio, Lone Fire, and a Cobra, but that's just a bad hand, and there's nothing you can really do about it. Like, if you drew into triple Wolf, double Felis, like, that stuff just kind of happens, so you gotta deal with it. So I definitely like these numbers. At one point I wanted to run 2 Scorpio, but I definitely changed that for the better. Gotta keep dropping the cards here. And next we've got, to help with that, triple Lone Fire Blossom. Drawing in a Lone Fire Blossom, unless your opponent has some sort of negate, is definitely better than Scorpio every single time. Because basically, you normal summon Lone Fire. Since its effect isn't a hard once per turn, you just summon another Lone Fire, then summon another one, and send them all to the graveyard, just so you can thin your deck out more to make sure you don't draw into it later on when you don't have any more Brilliant Fusion targets. Because we do only run 1 Seraphonite in this, just because you really need the extra deck space, especially in Link format. So, after that, we've got, going along with Brilliant Fusion, we've got 1 Trick Clown and 2 Tourmalines. Yes, we could be running Garnets, but I like the look of Tourmalines, and it's also the only one that I picked up. Because Garnets, I'm not exactly sure what they're at right now, but I know they're a decent amount to be spending on a normal or on a vanilla that you'll never summon. So yeah, I'm fine with Tourmalines. I'm fine with the look right now. Maybe if I have a chance to trade for a Garnet, I will, but it's not a big deal. I've been thinking about taking out, or at least some people have told me that I should take out the Trick Clown, because I'll show you why, but because it can be bricky, but Trick Clown is so amazing if you mill it, because just in Link format, this helps you complete like all of your combos, because you basically use this as an additional material for a Link summon when you're bringing out like your Gaia Saber, which I'll show you we run in this, as well as if you have a Madolche and a Brilliant Fusion in Link format, you can make a Chocolate a la Mode and a Trapeze Magician, which is one of the other reasons that we play this, because with Trapeze Magician, you can target any of your monsters, and that monster can just attack twice, pretty much for free. If you don't game them, then it's destroyed at the end of the battle phase, but most likely if you're going for that, you're going to be gaming your opponent anyways. And the reason we can survive with just 1 Trick Clown is because we're also running triple Ghost Ogre, which for a while I really thought that Effect Veiler would be a better option for this, but really it's not, because just the ability to be able to use it on your turn to stop your opponent's monsters from killing you, and being level 3 gives a little bit more utility, but in this deck you'll never really need to summon it. Like, you'll never have that clutch of a play, because you also don't run Synchros, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, so triple Ghost Ogre, definitely really good. I don't think I'd change this number. I like running it at 3, plus if I happen to draw into the Trick Clown, that's the reason I run 2 Tourmaline, is because basically it's impossible to not be able to use Brilliant Fusion. So I just want to make it impossible, but also not brick my hands, which Ghost Ogre does that, because drawing into it is fine, and not drawing into it is fine. I would prefer to send Trick Clown, but the combos will still work without Trick Clown. And then next, keep dropping these cards, boys. Okay, next into the Zodiac side of this, we've got 2 main deck cards, 1 Thoroughblade and 1 Whiptail. This has changed from the last deck profile, as I believe I was running Rats, but since I got a hold of a Broad Bull, that made this possible. So basically, the reason I'm running this, I could be running a second Whiptail, but I just really needed the space. So basically, you summon out your Thoroughblade with Invoker, I have Chalconine right now as an extra random material just because it's my favorite one. So basically, you make Chalconine, you make Broad Bull, detach Chalconine to search Whiptail, attach Whiptail, make Trident, and then you pretty much have a 28 beater with an extra material, so you can pop on your opponent's turn, or you can pop on your turn, I guess, and then he'll still at least be a 16. But yeah, basically, that Trident with the ability of Thoroughblade and the ability of Whiptail will banish your opponent's monster, as well as it'll inflict piercing on a defense position monster, which isn't as relevant, but you could say with Zodiac that it is. Yeah, and I could always show you that later, but with Mrs. Radiant, if you happen to draw into Mufoil and Angeli, if you have Mrs. Radiant on the field, your Trident, because it's an Earth, can get up to 32, which is really, really good in this format because everything's a small monster. And cap it off 1 Max C, best card. That's all I gotta say. Next, going on to the spells, you've got, obviously, Triple Brilliant Fusion. I'm really sad this went down to like 5 from what it used to be at 9, because that's when I traded for them. But it doesn't matter. You still need to run Triple Brilliant Fusion, because if you're running triple Lone Fire Blossom, triple Scorpio, then obviously you gotta run Triple Brilliant Fusion, because you're gonna want to see this in your opening hand no matter what. And I've done the math. You have about a, I think 76% chance to see this in your opening hand, which is very, very good. I do generally see it most of the time, and in Link format, it's insane. Because even though you have to use that extra deck spot for Seraphonite's an Earth, so you can just summon out all your monsters, send like Hootcake and Seraphonite for Mrs. Radiant, and then just make your Tiramisu, and then you have 1 extra zone for like a Trident or a Trapeze Magician. So yeah, Brilliant Fusion is insane in this deck, and that's why I upped the numbers on everything. So, next, we've got, this is kind of staple numbering here. We've got 2 Chateau and 1 Ticket. The reason you're running 2 Chateau is because, well, if you want to recycle, then you're definitely going to need a second one, because then you can search it out, and it helps to trigger effects like Chocolate a la Mode. And then 1 Ticket is fine, because actually you can shuffle them both back with Tiramisu, but you just really don't want to draw into Ticket, because you're going to search it out anyways. So yeah, this is pretty normal numbering. If I was really struggling for extra space, I might take out a second Chateau, just because I don't know that I've ever gotten to a point where I've needed a second one, but I've just seen that I've heard that it's a good idea to run a second Chateau. But yeah, I don't know that I'm set on that yet, but I do know I want to run 1 Ticket. And then next, we've got 2 Twin Twisters and 1 Regeki. If I had extra space, I might run a 3rd Twin Twister, just because I love being able to pitch an extra monster and then summon out a Hootcake and have fodder for it. Just because I hate back row. This deck, back row is the enemy. So running triple Twin Twisters, if I get a hold of a second or a 3rd one, I'll probably throw it in the side deck, because being able to run 3 would be really good for this. Just as long as you're not lowering the numbers on any of your Brilliant Fusion things or targets. But yeah, that's it for the main deck. Let's get on to the extra deck. So, we've got, obviously, 2 Queen. You don't want to run 1, because you'll end up, if you make 1, the only way to recycle it is with the Chateau. So you won't be able to make a second one if you're only running 1 of it. And then running 3 is unnecessary, because if you make 1, as long as it doesn't get banished, you just make the second one and then shuffle it back, and then if for some reason you need to make a 3rd one, which you don't really ever need to, then you have the ability to. And then 1 Chocolate a la Mode, which in Link format, I swear to God, this is insane. In Link format, this is insane. It is crazy. It's crazy the kind of stuff you can do, because you can abuse her effect since it's not a hard once per turn. So you can use it by using her first effect, shuffle back something like Angeli, then detach Seraphonite, because if you detach the Pudding Cess, because you hard summon this all the time, you detach the Seraphonite, because the Pudding Cess has to be attached to use her ability, or to use her a trigger effect. So you detach Seraphonite, shuffle back in the Angeli, and then special summon out, you special summon out, usually you'll have a Hootcake that summoned the Pudding Cess to make this, so you'll special summon out a Messengelato, and then that Messengelato will search for Chateau, which usually you'd want to search for Ticket, but with this, you can just activate the Chateau, shuffle back any other Madolche monster that you'll have in the graveyard, which I'll show you in the main combo you can do. You can add a second one to the graveyard, and then you shuffle that back, it triggers its effect, detach another material, which puts 1 in the grave for using your Tiramisu, because it puts the Pudding Cess in the grave, and then you just special summon out another Messengelato, and then you can search for your Ticket. So then you get 2 Messengelatos off of that, send send Hoot Cake and something else to the graveyard to make Mrs. Radiant, or yeah, and then you're golden. And then you can just go off in your combos, and I'll show you that. But next you got 1 Seraphonite. I'm thinking about running 2 just because a lot of times I have the ability to make 2, but just the extra deck space in this is very limited. Like, I've had to cut a lot of stuff just to add in all the Zodiac pieces and all the Link pieces. It's a lot of space taking up, so I'm running 1 Seraphonite just to be conservative. And then we've got cards that play very similar roles. We've got 2 Invoker and 1 Leviair. The 2 Invoker is necessary. I wouldn't run it at 1 because 1 Invoker will end up making your Tiramisu and the other Invoker will make a Trident. So you don't want to only have 1 and then have to choose. And then Leviair can play the part of Invoker if for some reason you don't want to if you don't have a Messengelato to summon from the deck, you can use Leviair to summon back like a Banished Angeli or something like that. That's how I usually use it. I'm not sure if I'm going to run Leviair in Link format, just because the normal combo doesn't work super well, because there isn't yet a 1-for-1 Link monster where it gives you 1 zone for 1 monster. So I might end up cutting Leviair to give me space for something else, maybe like a second Seraphonite or an additional Link monster, but for now that's where it is. I'll see at locals if I ever make Leviair and if it's ever useful. And then we have, for the Zodiac engine, we've got 1 Trident, 1 Broadbull, and just an extra monster. This can be anything, as long as it's not a Broadbull or a Trident, but I prefer Chalk9 just because it's my favorite one. Its effect is my favorite, and you'll never use it in this, but that's just the one that I prefer to use. Broadbull, obviously you detach the Chalk9 to search for the Whiptail, just to get an extra material and extra damage, and then you just make Trident on top of that, because Trident's the best. Better not ban Trident, or I'd be so pissed. And then finally, we've got 1 just generic rank 4 for defense, if you ever have to go first, which Tornado Dragon, and I usually make a board of Tornado Dragon and Trident if I ever have to go first, which doesn't happen very often because most of the meta decks want to go first, and my deck wants to go second because it's very OTK, as you see by the Trapeze Magician. But yeah, Trapeze Magician is necessary, 100%. Because you summon your Trick Clown, and then off of ticket you special summon a Mageline, and then you just make this, because it needs 2 spellcasters, which is the only downside of it. But besides that, you just target your strongest beater, it can attack twice, and then at the end of the battle phase it's destroyed, but it doesn't matter because you're going to win anyways. And if you need to, you could use this defensively if your opponent has kind of a weak monster that maybe they wouldn't even plan on attacking with anyways, but it's still a threat, so maybe they have like a weak Trident or something. Just target it with Trapeze Magician, and then it can attack twice, and at the end of the battle phase it's destroyed. So even if they didn't plan on attacking with it. I mean, a lot of times they won't throw the Trident into attack, because it needs to target an attack position monster. But yeah, there are a lot of other options that you could do with that. Just target a weak monster that has a strong effect, something like that. And now we have on to the only proxies that we're running in this, just because the Link monsters aren't out yet, because I could go pick up a Link Strike structure deck, but I don't actually run any of those cards in this deck. So we have 1 Mrs. Radiant, just a blank sleeve for now. I'm considering running this at 2, just because if, you don't OTK with your big board, and then you need to make something later, like Mrs. Radiant, you'll be all out of Link monsters to be able to do that. So I'm considering running a second Mrs. Radiant to be able to go through the same combos. The only issue with that is I'm only running 1 Seraphonite, so you can't make a double Brilliant Fusion. You can't, make a Brilliant Fusion play twice. And then, yeah, I know I'm just cycling through sleeves, whatever. But we've got 1 Gaia Saber, the Virtual Knight, which is a Link 3, and it has 1 down spot, which isn't ideal, but it is the only way to kind of get around the fact that the only reason we're running this instead of something like Decode Talker is because 1, it doesn't give your opponent a zone, which it doesn't matter because in this combo you kind of get rid of it afterwards. It doesn't last for very long. But the only reason you're running this specifically is because it has a down zone, and Mrs. Radiant has a bottom left and a bottom right. Because if it had a bottom left or a bottom right instead of just a straight down, then you'd have the issue with you wouldn't be able to use that zone, because with the new link rules, you can't just move your zones all over the place, so it actually matters. So the down zone helps with that, because you kind of get around it. Plus, I love, like, if this wasn't a rule, link format would be awful. It's already not great, but if the link monster is destroyed, the monsters summoned there aren't, which is good. And then another blank sleeve, we have a Firewall Dragon, which I'm assuming is going to get banned because it's just too good. But the only reason we go from a link 2 to a link 3 to a link 4 is just I figured out what to do in this certain combo with the Angeli and the Predaplant. You end up making this to be able to summon your Trident into it, and so that gives you like 2 stops, because you have the Trident to pop a face-up card, and then you have the Firewall Dragon to bounce a face-up card, which can be really, really good. You do give 1 to your opponent, but that's totally fine, because then if they summon there, then you have 2 cards that you can bounce. So you could like bounce your opponent's card that's summoned in that zone and then something else just for free. And then, and then Trident has its effect too. So that's it for the main and extra decks. Now we have the side deck, and just like before, it's a bit of a mess. So we have 2 Sticky String Kaiju. Okay, I could be running Gamma Seal. I don't have any right now, but I think Sticky String is fine. I like the stats, and I like how it doesn't work with anything else, so you don't have to worry about like dropping a Gamma Seal on a Mermail player and then having them go off. Next we have 2 Grand Horn of Heaven. This is a very underrated card. I really love its effect, because especially with Xyz being dominant in these formats, Grand Horn of Heaven just stops an Xyz summon. Your opponent draws a card, but it doesn't matter because it goes into their battle phase and they're not prepared. And then basically if they don't have anything for their battle phase, it goes to their main phase too, and then they didn't do anything to you.